All right, we might as well get started. I want to be mindful of everyone's time today. First and foremost, thank you for joining. My name is Ryan, and I lead the commercial partnerships within the Offshore Wind team here at SGN. For those of you that do not know, SGN is a market intelligence and data analysis company for the ocean industries. We're broken down into three main segments. That's rigs, shipping, and offshore wind. Today's discussion is obviously around offshore wind. And within our offshore wind team, we have two focus areas. The first being our wind analytics platform, where we help developers, financial institutions, and the supply chain understand the global offshore wind industry in an easy-to-use platform. Secondly, we offer consultancy services within the quantification of life cycle emissions within an offshore wind farm. We're advising governments, working with developers on the required reports for the tenders and the supply chain. Norway was the first to market, but we see many countries following in Norway's footsteps with sustainability requirements in the upcoming bids, and we're here to help. But I'm very excited about today's discussion. We have Johan Gustafsson from SGN, who will provide a short-term view and current status of floating offshore wind in Europe. Everything he discusses is derived from our wind analytics platform. That will be followed up by Malte Paul of Mainstream Renewables, who will go into the opportunities and challenges from an industry player's perspective. Every month, we offer a short and concise, do our very best efforts to keep it to 19 minutes, discussion on a relevant offshore wind topic. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A section at the top of the screen. I'll do my very best effort to get to all of them. And with that being said, I hope you find today's discussion insightful, and I'll hand it over to Johan. Johan, take it away.
Thank you for that introduction, Ryan, and good afternoon to all the people listening in. Today, I'm going to present the current status and intermediate outlook for floating wind in Europe. I will go through some of the key countries and explain their track record and what we can expect in the next coming years. UK can be seen as one of the key countries, both in Europe and on a global scale when it comes to floating wind. It was until just recently the home of the largest floating wind farm, the 48 megawatts Kincardine Phase 2. UK has large ambitions when it comes to floating wind. The ScotWind auction was a milestone for both the UK and Europe, with a total of 18 gigawatts of capacity auctioned out, bringing some serious attention to the segment. UK has some ambitious climate targets, and as a result of this, combined with the need for innovation in floating wind, they launched the INTOG leasing round. INTOG was designated to reducing emissions from oil and gas production and boosting innovation for floating wind. The leasing round can be separated into two categories. IN, which will bring small-scale innovative projects of less than 100 megawatts, and TOG is targeting projects directly connected to oil and gas infrastructure to reduce carbon emissions associated with production. The leasing round brought a total of 13 projects forward and offered exclusivity agreements for either innovation or decarbonization. This exclusivity agreements enables a fast track for the projects. Therefore, INTOG projects like Greenvolt, Salamander, and Senos will be coming up pretty quickly, even before earlier announced capacity. We will also see some more capacity being auctioned out soon, with the Celtic Sea Round 5 opening this year. This round will consist of 4 gigawatts of floating wind, where we are expecting more than 20 bids for the lease areas. France currently has 2 megawatts of floating wind through the Floatgen project, which came live in 2018. The project can be considered unique as it started producing offshore hydrogen a little over a week ago. We will also see some more innovation coming live within 2024 with 3 different floating projects deploying different technologies. Each of the projects, as seen to the right on this slide, will consist of 3 turbines each. We're seeing previously deployed technologies such as damping pool for the EelMed, which is the same technology used for Floatgen, and the wind flow technology developed by Principal Power for EFGL. With the EFGL project, we are seeing some technology optimizations for the wind flow technology, where the expected hull mass is between 1,600 and 2,000 tons steel for a 10 megawatt turbine. This is about 1,000 tons lighter than what we saw when the technology was being deployed for the 9.5 megawatt Kincardine turbines. France also has some auction rounds ongoing for floating wind set to close this year. The projected capacity with expected COD in 2030 is listed on this slide. In the current market, the capacity for these rounds can be considered high. However, many of the other projects globally being commissioned in 2030 are of gigawatt scale. Norway has had large-scale floating wind turbines in their ocean since the Unitech Saferos, the former Hywind demo, which became operational in 2009. It is closely neighbored by the Tetra Spa demo at the Met Center facility in Norway, and the test center has more plans for floating demonstrators with likes of Seatroll, Blue Star, and OO Starwind. With the newly deployed Hywind Tampen project, they are now the home to the world's largest floating wind farm. This is also the third time the Hywind technology has been used for a project. We are also seeing some technology optimization in this instance. Looking at the floating wind specifications from our wind analytics data table, we can see that they are deploying only 19 anchors for 33 mooring lines. The project where Aker Solutions acted as the EPCI also utilized the Norwegian supply chain in several instances for the projects. In Norway, all eyes are currently on the highly competitive Utsira Nord auction, which is expected to bring at least 1.5 gigawatt of floating wind within 2030 through 3 winning bids. There are 13 confirmed consortium bidders for the pre-qualification rounds, and the results should be in by the end of the year. In Portugal, the first operational floating wind turbine was introduced in 2012 with the 2 megawatt wind float 1 project. Later in 2020, Portugal got additional 3 turbines with the 25 megawatt wind float Atlantic installation, which is owned by Ocean Winds, Repsol, and Principal Power. As we can see, Portugal already had some meaningful experience with floating offshore wind. Portugal has an ambitious offshore wind targets of 10 gigawatt capacity by 2030. There was long questions of the road to reaching that target, but there was an announcement in May which sets expectations for 2 gigawatts of floating wind to be auctioned out this year, which is a necessary step in reaching their 10 gigawatt capacity target by 2030. Italy has in the later years gained key interest from large developers through proposed projects. Since yesterday, we are counting 100 active projects for the country. They especially emerge in the coastal areas of Sardinia, Sicily, and Puglia. Large floating wind projects, often in several phases, is proposed. However, we are yet to see many of them moving forward. Looking at just the numbers for the project's proposals, it will seem like the potential is over 100 projects. However, many of the proposed projects are overlapping, as shown in the picture. That means that when one is approved, the others will be suspended. Spain has hosted the SAT and V2 power technology at the Ploquin test center in the Canaries. There is also a megawatt scale version of the SAT technology under installation at the BMEP site in Spain. The country has extensive shipbuilding capacity and has been involved with several offshore wind projects globally. From the picture, you will see one of the Windfloat Atlantic foundations from the Navantia shipyard in Feeney. The same shipyard had also delivered floating foundations to Hywind Scotland and the Kincardine project. The long-awaited POEMs was announced earlier this year. They set the roadmap for the objective of reaching Spain's 3 gigawatt target by 2030. It's illustrated 5 Spanish marine zones, which is shown in the picture on the slide. Among these, 5,000 square kilometers is reserved for offshore wind development. This makes it possible to go way beyond Spain's current target. The Spanish authorities have signaled that the first offshore wind auction can be held by the end of this year, but details on the auction round have yet to be confirmed. With that, I want to thank you for your attention. There are, of course, some additional exciting markets for floating wind, but this is markets I wanted to highlight today. Looking forward to hearing Malte talk about the opportunities and challenges that lies ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Johan. Very, very insightful on each of the countries there. Malta, if you want to take it away on your presentation, we can go from there.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan, for inviting me here. Thank you to all participants for being available in the afternoon here, and special greetings to all colleagues that I can see from several different other projects. So good to have a webinar with you. So my name is Malte Powell, and I work for Mainstream Renewable Power as a senior project manager. On the next slide, you will see that Mainstream is part of the Norwegian Aker Group, and the Norwegian Aker Group is more than 180 years, let's say, old industrial holding with several decades experience in oil and gas, and here many years in floating oil and gas. The main pillars of the Aker consortia is, for example, Aker BP, so oil and gas exploration production, or Aker Biomarine. So just one statement here, world leading krill supplier. But fish farming is a business I see leveraging and synergy potential here. Aker Solution, a big EPCI contractor. They bought Kværner. We always had them already for substations on the radar. This is part of our holding as well of our consortia. Digitalization, and my mother company, you can see that on the right hand side, Aker Horizons. So Aker Horizons is in the field of carbon capture and storage, of hydrogen production, offshore and onshore, projects under development in Norway onshore mainly, but also other countries. And I was starting an Aker Offshore Wind, special focus on floating, and we have been combined with another portfolio company, Mainstream. I'm now speaking on behalf of Mainstream Renewable Power. We are developing offshore wind, fixed bottom and floating from our Hamburg office, and we have an ownership in Principal Power together with Ocean Wind and Tokyo Gas. And you can see on the picture on the right-hand side, the wind float semi-submersible foundation, the yellow beauty here, if I can say it like this. Yeah, Johan, you already mentioned 8 units have been installed, technology readiness level here stating 8, maybe I would already say it's 9. The units are in operation since 2020, almost a 10 megawatt class, 550 units, 7.5 giga are under design. The biggest wind speed is 60 meters per second, so already a little bit above 30 meters, if I remember correctly, is 12 before and more. So it's heavy Orkan. Wind speed here, 400 gigawatt hours and 80,000 hours operational. So it's important to have already big turbines in the ocean.
That's fantastic information, Malta, on the background on how Mainstream is involved within the industry. But if you could you elaborate or touch on some of the opportunities and challenges that you see from an industry player's perspective within floating offshore wind?
Yeah, so absolutely, Ryan, and thanks for that. Maybe we just leave this slide for a second. I think the main message here is to use the live and real information which we can take to optimize design, installation, pre-commissioning processes. But let me talk quickly about opportunities and challenges. So in my view, the biggest opportunity, which is absolutely obvious, is that floating allows a lot more sea areas to be developed with offshore wind potential. And I think this is absolutely needed and will play an important role in the energy transition. This is, I think, absolutely clear to all of us. But further, floating means less of an impact to the environment. So I think less of an impact to the environment and coexistence, which is a very important vocabulary in these days. Examples here, I would say, is the underwater noise or airborne noise. So it's not a heavy monopile that we are driving, it's anchors or eventually piles, but less of an impact energy for sure. Or simply the positioning outside of bird areas, of nature-sensitive areas, outside of military areas, outside of shipping routes, just as a second consideration, as a huge opportunity in my view. And I think one last opportunity that I see is that we can, let's say, de-risk to some extent the supply chain. So I think we will be able to go away from the usual suspects producing monopiles and from the heavy long leg or floating heavy cranes installation vessel. We can see long-term charter agreements. Here we will have slightly different, let's say, challenges. Coming to that now, and however saying it is a huge opportunity in the supply chain, there are also huge challenges with the supply chain. So I think we will need more shipyards here. This is ideal if we talk about steel construction for a modular setup on shipyards, but we need to start upgrading the shipyards now. This needs to happen now to be ready in 2030. So this is important. And if we talk about supply, we have to talk about the human resources as well. So welders, steel workers, blue collars, but also white collars. That's clear. Port availability, just briefly mentioned, you could imagine that the draft restrictions are, or that the draft is massive. So semi-submersible is not so draft intensive like a SPA, but nonetheless, we need certain draft. We need onshore storage area. We need load-in possibilities. And now coming to the last point with the challenges, it is all about the handling. So it is about the port handling. And the same, I think, coming to the track record here again, the design upgrade I see as a huge a challenge. This is, if I'm talking to the designers in-house or with principal power, the step from 10 to 15 megawatt, this is a challenge. And I think it is extremely important to have the 10 megawatt on a floater already out there, and to take this lesson learned and implement that in handling procedures as well as in design procedures. This is an industry challenge, but I think a track record is of essence here. Ryan.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Malta. And I really want to emphasize that it is extremely important to have a track record, especially when the plan is to upscale the floaters. So very, very good points there. But that does lead me into a second question I do have for you. Can you touch on some of the specific areas that one might not immediately think about that may create a great opportunity for floating offshore wind?
Yeah, thank you for the second question. And I think floating offshore wind, number one is UK, number two, Norway eventually. This is only a stomach feeling from the, let's say, press statements, but there are indeed other areas, different areas where you are not immediately thinking about floating. And in my view, a huge floating offshore wind potential lays in the Baltic Sea. So really from, let's say, east of Bornholm, up to Finland, in front of the Baltic states, Poland, Sweden. We can see deep water here. We can see a Baltic declaration with a target of 90 gigawatts, more than 90 gigawatts of offshore wind. And I'm convinced that floating will play a significant role here. Above, I can see that there is a huge supply chain opportunity, specifically in Poland, with the shipyards with the experience around metal handling existent. And so I think we should not only look into Spain, Portugal, UK, or Norway. There are other areas. I think it is very essential and important to synchronize areas, to share cross-country learnings. And so I think this is, for me, an area which has a high potential.
Excellent. Thank you, Malta. We are coming up on the time here. I did promise everyone a short and concise discussion. I know we are all busy. Most webinars are an hour long. I personally find it very difficult to carve out an hour. So I do want to be mindful of everyone's time and keep it to our little bit over 19 minutes here. But I do want to thank Malta from Mainstream joining us today, and Johan from our company, SGN. Thank you for your time. We hope to see you next month and months forward. We will be in touch, but feel free to reach out to me directly at SGN, and I'm sure we can. I can get you in touch with Malta from Mainstream if you have specific questions there. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll be in touch.